So another edition of the Heel to the Face podcast is on the air. I'm Jarad.
I'm Brandon.
We're coming off of WrestleMania Backlash. We're in separate locations as COVID has caught us up once again from both our workplaces, from us personally. But either way, another edition of the show is here. And Heel to the Face podcast starts right now.
Fans celebrate with me from Rome to Rochester.
Bad Luck would be my middle name. They might as well tag me up with my buddies from Syracuse.
So another edition of the Heel to the Face podcast is here. Brandon, myself, Jarad. Make sure to follow us at Heel to the Face on Twitter and all other social media. And most importantly, make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, as wherever you're listening, whether you're watching us on YouTube, you're listening to us on our podcast formats. But again, the Twitter, a big spot because it's you people out there who did better than myself and Brandon included, picking all 6 matches of WrestleMania Backlash this past weekend perfectly, including the one match that I thought I was almost certain was going to go another way, and that's Rated RK Bro with Drew McIntyre versus the Bloodline. But we put the Twitter polls out there. We put them out there for every single match, and at the end of the day, the Twitter universe was correct on all 6 matches. A perfect 6 for 6.
So wait, are you saying Twitter's where the smart people are now? Is that what's going on?
Maybe the people who just specifically follow at Heel to the Face.
We got some smart listeners.
Yes, and some smart followers as well. And if you're a follower, make sure you're listening. If you're listening, make sure you're a follower. But yeah, kind of a surprise there. But after WrestleMania Backlash, obviously the big news this week following WrestleMania Backlash, in which the Bloodline won, which was a surprise because, as we talked about, it was a good opportunity to have the Bloodline lose with nothing on the line. So, I mean, if the Bloodline's going to win when championships are on the line, and the Bloodline's going to win when championships aren't on the line, what is going to stop the Bloodline? Well, apparently it looks like Roman Reigns himself might be putting a stop to the Bloodline. In Trenton, New Jersey, this past Saturday night at a house show, he says he doesn't know the next time he'll be seeing you guys, as he's might be taking a break away. And a lot of people were wondering what that was about. And now Dave Meltzer has reported that Roman Reigns has been pulled, at least from a full-time schedule, away from all the summer house show dates. And the most recent revelation is the Hell in a Cell poster for the literal next pay-per-view on June the 5th from Chicago does not have Roman Reigns featured on it or as one of the talent subject to appear. So, Brandon, the question is, Roman Reigns, he is the Universal Champion, the champion of all champions. He is running the show. This isn't just The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin in the 90s. This is one-man band. What is the idea? What is the plan here with Roman Reigns potentially taking some time off?
So here's what I've been hearing, and it's Roman Reigns is going to take off 10 weeks this summer, and that's the plan. And that includes the live event schedule. So it sounds like he's going to take some time off. In addition, his new contract that's been reported out there is he's going to it's not going to be a Brock Lesnar type deal. A lot of people are speculating, he's going to be here, once a month kind of thing. It's not like that. He's going to be at television tapings or television, live television shows. He's just not going to be at live events for the foreseeable future. It's a lighter schedule. And I mean, he's been on different radio stations recently and just different interviews where he's looking towards Hollywood, man. I think that's on the horizon. I think this contract is a way for him to still be in the business, is pretty active. But I think don't be surprised if you're going to see him on more television, more movies. I think you're going to see him broaden his horizons in the next year or so.
I mean, that's definitely a true thing for sure. But I guess obviously what the crazy thing about all of this is exactly where Roman. If you said Randy Orton was going to be doing this or Drew McIntyre was going to be doing this, obviously this isn't raising a lot of red flags. But this is the standard bearer for the company right now. This is literally your overall champion. This isn't just one of your champions. This is your overall champion. He holds both belts for Raw and SmackDown simultaneously. He's going on one of the longest streaks as WWE champion in company history, which is saying a lot, or at least definitely for sure in modern history. But now we're approaching real things that like Hulk Hogan didn't even approach, which is just strange to think that we'd ever get to that point with the amount of pay-per-views they have, the amount of television they have, that Roman Reigns would still be holding the championship this long. We used to talk about Brock Lesnar's reigns and Goldberg's reigns and all these reigns from a couple years ago. And frankly, we thought that those reigns were like unbreakable, that Brock Lesnar had the belt for 6 to 8 months straight and stuff like that. But Obviously, now it's just crazy that he's held the belt for as long as he has. The question that I guess I'll have for you is, are you okay with him keeping the belt throughout his hiatus?
Yes, 110%. I don't think there's because here's the thing. If you're going to drop the belt, it's so predictable at that point. So like this next match, you're like, okay, he's going to lose the belt, so it's going to lose its luster. Plus, why don't we let things just play out until till WrestleMania next year? Where we're obviously fantasy booking it, where The Rock becomes into the picture. Maybe The Rock takes the championship off his hands. That's where I would like to see it go. I know typically if you're not competing for 30 days, I believe is like the standard number. If you're not active for 30 days, you relinquish the title. Is typically how business is done. But I think they can. I hate saying this because you don't want to make too many exceptions. But I think in this case, I think with Roman Reigns the way he is and how over he is, he's the only person right now that I feel can carry that title with as much weight as Roman Reigns.
Now, you say about him holding the championship until The Rock. Now, I will say this much. I do not want to see The Rock and Roman Reigns in a championship match. That is something that I've been hearing a lot of people talk about, how it needs the title, how the title should be on the line. But I do not, for the same reason as we've talked about many, many times before, the same as the house show scenario, when the championship's on the line and you know the plans of these future people. For example, if the championship was on the line and you already heard about Roman Reigns taking 10 weeks off following WrestleMania, you'd assume we already know the winner of this match. That was great about this year, is that Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns were both on a full-time-ish levels. They were both people who were not going away or that we knew were going away. So who was going to win versus Brock and Roman was undetermined. We didn't know going into the match for sure. Obviously, the Rock and Cena 1 was a better match in my eyes because Rock and Cena 2 had the championship on the line, which by default made it a worse match because we knew the result the whole time versus the first one, we didn't. So I think Rock and Roman Reigns shouldn't have the belt on the line because if it does have the belt on the line, like you just said, The Rock taking the belt off Roman Reigns, do you see The Rock? I mean, where he is with the XFL literally starting up next spring, going on a house show run, do you see him showing up in Des Moines, Iowa on a Saturday night defending the belt against Kofi Kingston?
No. Here's what I would say, and this is obviously, this is just, how I would maybe do it if that were to come for fruition. And I would say this: you have Rock, you have Roman, you have that match, and if you do it for the title, what happens is, just to keep people guessing, why not throw the belt on the Rock? And then I know this is going to sound bad, so don't take this the wrong way, but maybe the Monday Night Raw or the SmackDown after, the Friday Night SmackDown after, The Rock comes out and says, hey, I just wanted to show everybody that I am the real leader of the bloodline. I don't need the belt. I got to go. I just wanted to come back and make sure I kick Roman's ass, show him who the real leader, the real chief of the bloodline really is. Goes back to Hollywood. I'm not saying that's happening. I know that's kind of a cheesy way to do it, but that's one way to do it where a title change can happen. I mean, obviously they can make it better than kind of how I proposed it, but they could essentially have The Rock win the championship and then essentially relinquish the title. That can happen.
Without the belt, because you don't need that little cheesy post-Raw thing after.
But
and
that's what I'm hearing, though.
That exact thing doesn't happen, and that we then know who's going to win. Meaning in the exact scenario that The Rock wins it and relinquishes the belt the next night, let's say anything else happens, that means The Rock is not going to win it. Because The Rock's not going to go on a run with the belt.
Here's the thing. I don't want that to happen either. But everything that I keep hearing about, all the different things on the rumor mill that I keep hearing is it's going to be, if they're going to have the match, it's going to be for the title. I agree with you. I would not want to I wouldn't want the title anywhere near this. But WWE is probably going to make it so there's a title on the line. That's how I feel. Now, what I would do if it was me booking it, yeah, you don't need the title involved. The only title you put out there is the tribal chief title of the bloodline. That would be a cool stipulation where the winner calls himself the real tribal chief of the bloodline. That would be something a little bit better, I think.
So let's move on to another thing that's been talked about this past week and a lot of people are reading into, and that is the Money in the Bank commercials that Cody Rhodes has been filming. He filmed, and then they aired on WrestleMania Backlash. They aired it on Raw this past week, and I imagine they're going to air it going forward to try to sell tickets for Money in the Bank at Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas. And one thing that Cody Rhodes, I guess, is noted in saying this commercial that everybody picked up on is that the winner of Money in the Bank, both men's and women's, gets to cash in their Money in the Bank at WrestleMania. I don't know if that was a flub on their part in the sense of they have up until WrestleMania to cash in the Money in the Bank contract, or if it's going to be exactly as worded, meaning that is now another Royal Rumble winner, in the sense of you win the Money in the Bank, you're going to get the cash in on one of the two belts, meaning it's essentially the Royal Rumble will be one belt, Money in the Bank will be the other. If that is the scenario, do you like the change to Money in the Bank? Because I'll start by saying I do not. I think it takes away from the Royal Rumble a little bit. And I like that the Royal Rumble, you get to pick your champion, and then the other championship is more organic, meaning it's not that, you have literal two people who are going to be fighting for the championship with the same scenario. I'm okay with two championships in the sense of one goes by the Royal Rumble winner and one goes by a storyline. And in the case of this scenario where Roman is both champions, you have opportunities like this. Obviously, Money in the Bank kind of handcuffs you a little bit to mean that, okay, I guess we're going back to two belts and we're going back to these exact matches.
I agree with you. I 100% agree. I'm going to add an extra layer to it. I think you leave the Money in the Bank matches alone. You leave that completely alone. And what happens is you still have Royal Rumble where the winner gets to cash in that ticket, that golden ticket after winning the Rumble of a person of their choosing. I like that part of it. Now, taking a step back to the Money in the Bank portion, I like the fact with the Money in the Bank where you win it, and it's always something like every time the Money in the Bank person shows up, ooh, can they cash in tonight? It gives the audience a little something to, a little appetite, like, hey, the Money in the Bank person's here. I wonder if they're going to cash in. It's always like that in the back of your mind, like, is tonight the night? That's why I've always liked that.
And frankly, to me, what's probably if this was to make any sense at all, is that Money in the Bank would have to be much farther down the line, because how are you going to have somebody win this on July the 2nd and then keep that essentially fresh? Because the whole thing about Money in the Bank is it's a contract you carry around with you. Now, if you win it and it doesn't have that allure, like you mentioned about when can they cash in, I imagine whoever wins it is not going to carry the contract with them, and it's just going to be like an Andre the Giant Battle Royal. You win it, and then you show you got the contract, and then maybe it's like mentioned underneath your name every time you come out. But other than that, you kind of got to forget about it, because it's 8 months away plus till WrestleMania.
Yeah, so, it makes no sense.
Yeah, it's way too long to kind of keep that fresh. If for some reason they were thinking about changing it up to that extent, thinking about changing it up to the extent of you win it and you cash it in at a specific time, I'd have to imagine that'd be SummerSlam, right? SummerSlam is a WrestleMania of the summer. They're obviously putting it in the stadium this year. They're giving it that treatment. So you would imagine that if for some reason they were going to change it up to when you're going to cash it in, it'd be much more convenient to do it for SummerSlam. It'd be similar to what we talked about before, where how King of the Ring was in June, and the winner of King of the Ring would be essentially what the Royal Rumble winner is to SummerSlam, and that was 2 months later, which is the same time frame from Royal Rumble to WrestleMania. So yeah, you would think that the Money in the Bank winner, if they were going to change it, would have it at SummerSlam, especially too with a bunch of stadium shows coming up. SummerSlam, Clash at the Castle, obviously return to Saudi Arabia, Royal Rumble next year. That just seems like a very long time to keep that fresh, because the Royal Rumble essentially is a long time to keep the Royal Rumble winner fresh. I mean, you see them struggling at the Elimination Chamber No Way Out pay-per-view and what to do with the guy who's going to WrestleMania. And I get it with like John Cena and The Rock a couple years ago, when we already knew that they were fighting, they kind of went on their own way. So you could kind of do that in the sense that, he wins it and then they forget about it. But one major thing that we've learned about WWE over the past couple of years for sure is nobody's safe on the roster. So I can't imagine a scenario where WWE puts something on a wrestler, something on a superstar, and essentially guarantees them a contract to WrestleMania. We saw that with Bray Wyatt. He's at WrestleMania, and a few months later, you don't even guarantee that he's still on the roster. Braun Strowman has been former champion. I mean, all these people. So I can't imagine WWE essentially, because that would be great. There would be nothing in WWE I'd want to win more than the Money in the Bank contract, because that is the most legitimate contract. That's even more legitimate than a real contract, because it's a contract that guarantees you'll be employed with WWE till WrestleMania, which is both a personal and character accomplishment. Character-wise, you're going to WrestleMania. Personally, you're going to stay employed till WrestleMania. So yeah, I mean, I don't see WWE essentially doing that with somebody. It'd be cool, essentially, in that aspect of guaranteeing their employment, but I don't see WWE doing it. I guess in the time between now and Money in the Bank, we'll see how that exactly holds up. Maybe that was just a Cody Rhodes mistake, but a lot of people have been running with it and saying that that's a new thing. And some other people have said in the back that they plan on, that means obviously they're going to change the belts and switch them back up. That would kill the whole Roman Reigns versus Rock with all the belts on the line thing next year, because I don't think The Rock is going to win the Royal Rumble or Money in the Bank. So that would kill all of that. But moving on, we move on to essentially backwards a little bit. WrestleMania Backlash. We haven't really talked exactly about the pay-per-view from Providence this past Sunday night. But yeah, an overall good pay-per-view. I think a lot of people, our fan base on Twitter gave it a B+ pay-per-view. What is your takeaways from the pay-per-view as a whole?
I would say B+. I agree. I think B+ is a solid score. I mean, from top to bottom, it was actually one of the better shows, WWE pay-per-views. I'm not going to call it the premium live event. I'm always going to call it a pay-per-view. It's just how it is. I think it was the best WWE pay-per-view, aside from WrestleMania, the whole glitz and glamour of it, that I've seen in months, and probably this year, honestly. I mean, I know the year's young. I know we're only a few months in, but it was a very solid pay-per-view, and I would say it was an AEW caliber pay-per-view.
Well, I think what I liked about the pay-per-view, and I said I liked it going into the pay-per-view. You talked about how it was, not as grand of a promotion, and it seemed like. But see, that's kind of what I liked about this pay-per-view, because I don't want everything to be up to WrestleMania. Everything was WrestleMania. Royal Rumble is in a stadium. Elimination Chamber is in a stadium. I mean, everything is so big. Day one was treated like essentially a Big Four pay-per-view. You had Brock on the card. All this stuff. So it was nice. I do like having these in your house pay-per-views, because that's the purpose. That's what also makes SummerSlams feel bigger, WrestleMania feel bigger, is that these pay-per-views, stay in their lane and have their place. And, I like the fact that the championship wasn't on the line, because again, it keeps the championship fresh. It makes the championship more important when it is on the line than just being on the line at every single pay-per-view. Obviously, it looks like it might not be on the line at Hell in a Cell. But no, I liked overall the structure of the pay-per-view. It felt like the NXT pay-per-views we've talked about, where you had 6 matches, no pre-show, no filler, no segments in between the matches, like 6 matches, which essentially for 3 hours, that's 30 minutes a match. Obviously, it ended just shy of 3 hours, but you're given essentially each match 30 minutes of time. And like I said, there's no filler. There was no nonsense. There was no matches on the pre-show. And, I like the structure. 6 NXT style. Remember NXT a couple of years ago, the pay-per-views were like 5 matches. And you're like, are there going to be more than that? There's only 5 matches. And you're like, no, it's 5 matches, 2 hours and 15 minutes, nothing in between. Every match gets essentially 20 minutes of time. Like you said, the AEW model. The difference is the AEW model, they had like 8 or 9 matches at their last pay-per-view, so it went like 4.5 hours long. But the idea is the same, that each match essentially got a half an hour of time. Now, obviously, there's entrances and there's commercials in between the matches, but from 8 to 8:30 was one match, 8:30 to 9 was another. Each match was in like within a half an hour frame. Nothing was too rushed. Some matches were, longer than 25 minutes. Some matches were shorter than 15 minutes. But the point is, nothing was rushed. And I like the idea that there wasn't a lot on the line, because it just let the matches speak for themselves without having to have all the stipulations. Like, a lot of people enjoyed the main event. And I think what they enjoyed about it is the fact that they knew that they had to perform a good match, knowing that the championship wasn't on the line. It wasn't any stipulations. So you just got to entertain the people with wrestling. They see wrestling every single week, so you got to give them pay-per-view caliber wrestling in a 6-man tag, in which is different than the 6-man tags they watch every week on Raw.
Yeah, and to add to that, the nice thing about that 6-man tag was every single participant in the 6-man tag had a few moments to shine. Everybody had a great showing in that match. Everybody, it was awesome. I mean, Randy did his normal stuff, Riddle did his thing, the Usos. It was so much fun to watch everybody not only get their shit in, as they always say, but, everybody, I would say, got over in that match. Everybody did a great job. There was nobody, in my opinion, that outshined the other. I think the whole group was just fantastic. And to me, WWE needs to take a page out of that book and keep doing stuff like that, because that is the way to get fans like myself to watch it more. And I will say, and I want to touch base on what you said just a moment ago. You're right. I was kind of shooting the bar kind of low for the pay-per-view. But I will say this. I actually kind of like the fact that they set the bar really low so they can over-deliver on the pay-per-view. So for me, if you want to set the bar low and give me matches like this and give me a card that was just like WrestleMania Backlash, I am all for it.
Yeah, no, and I think that is a positive because I think they kind of overshoot most of the time.
Yeah.
It's good to just kind of have like that B pay-per-view. I think the original tag team unification match was maybe overshooting a little bit in the sense of giving it that WrestleMania style, like winner take all championship match kind of importance to it. And then they scaled back, but it looks like we're probably going to be getting that. I don't know if that's going to be Hell in a Cell, but Rated RK Bro this past week, they defended the belts against Street Profits and then said that they're showing up on SmackDown this Friday night to challenge the Usos. So I guess we're still going to get that down the line. And I guess the question is, down the line, where do you see the tag team belts in the near future?
I'm just going to – there's a report that came out today, actually, that WWE is not planning on unifying the tag titles anytime soon. So it looks like even though RK Bro is showing up on SmackDown this week to go after the unification, by all accounts, I mean, we'll have to see obviously tomorrow night, but by all accounts, it sounds like WWE is kind of backing off that unification deal, which is kind of odd for me because why would you have RK Bro cut a promo this past week on Monday Night Raw saying something totally different than what maybe you were trying to do? So for me, we just got to get some clarity, and we're going to get some clarity on Friday for sure to see what actually happens. And I do want to add something, another layer to this. I know we're talking a lot of Roman Reigns and the Bloodline. What's going to happen? What's next? So what's next for the Usos? I mean, if Roman's taking all this time off, the Usos aren't going to be taking time off. So does that mean we're just going to see a lot more Uso tag team matches? I mean, what do you think is going to happen in Roman's absence?
Yeah, no, I just feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe like that the Roman absence, do you think it's, and this is what I think it's still going to be a pay-per-view only. I don't think we're going to get a full absence. I feel like we're going to get the Brock Lesnar treatment in the sense of his absence. He's not going to be really gone, if he's at least still the champion for sure. But yeah, I guess more Usos leading the Bloodline and maybe more big-time feuds in their tag team division, meaning not just going against the Street Profits of the world, you know what I mean? But like the RK Bro, I think that's a main event tag team because you have Randy Orton in it. Maybe there's some more main event tag teams. Maybe Drew McIntyre and somebody else team up. Maybe they do add a kind of pseudo third person to the Bloodline for the time being. It's going to be interesting to see how they keep that fresh. But yeah, I see the Usos just in a lot of big high-profile tag team matches.
I got one for you. And for the people that are listening and not seeing it, I'm doing the Too Sweet. Do you, what are your thoughts on maybe, I know we're kind of fantasy booking it maybe down the line, but what do you think of AJ Styles and Finn Balor as a tag team? Would that be something you'd be interested in?
Now, I think, I feel like I want to see that more one-on-one down the line, but for the time being, but let's say RK Bro breaks up. I don't know anytime soon. Obviously, we thought they were going to break up a long time ago. They still haven't, and now it seems like that's not really going to happen in the foreseeable future. But maybe when they eventually do break up, it'd be a good time for AJ and Finn Balor to take that RK Bro spot of being the new high-level tag team on Monday Night Raw.
I'm good with that.
No, I'd love to see it. And again, that'd be another faction if they're allowed to maybe keep the club, so you say, going. While maybe adding some members to it. I don't know how many members, but I think at least start with a tag team though. I'd be a big fan of that.
And I got to ask you, speaking of the AJ Finn Balor situation with what do they call themselves? The Judgment Day? Is that what the name is now?
The Judgment Day, where Rhea Ripley showed up and made her debut in that faction this past week.
Actually, not to go too far on a tangent. I know we're kind of jumping around. I know when we were exchanging messages about Rhea Ripley, you were that surprised. I wasn't. We were talking about Rhea weeks ago.
I wasn't as surprised, no, because we talked about them adding a female in general and stuff like that. So it wasn't a real shocker. Of course not. Nothing in WWE is really much of a huge shocker. But I guess it was the idea that they were adding another person because I wasn't 100% sold on that just yet. I wasn't, everything sounds like it's going to be a stable, and then some things don't. I mean, look at RK Bro. I mean, they haven't expanded. They're exactly what they are. They're just a tag team together. We've even had like smaller tag teams before where you think they're going to grow into bigger groups. They don't. So I guess it was more or less it wasn't so much a surprise, but the realization that they are indeed expanding to become a group and not just, like AJ and Omos, for example. They're expanding to be a faction.
And here's the other thing, too. I don't know if you caught that I think it was this week on Monday Night Raw. Edge is looking to add more members. So that could be a pretty good sized faction by the time it's filled up. You know what I mean? I feel like there's a few superstars that could use this kind of push right now. Is there any names that not names maybe you're hearing, but are there names that you would like to see in the Judgment Day?
There's a lot of guys who like a good. We've seen him in the factions before, but what about like a Mustafa Ali? We've seen him in factions before trying to elevate his stock with Retribution and stuff like that, and he's come back. And I feel like since he's come back, he's been a pretty big disappointment. A lot of hype about his return, and then he had like Asuka and him came back, and Asuka is kind of been getting the better rub, so you say.
I got one for you. How about Tommaso Ciampa?
That they fought this past week on Monday Night Raw, and that's another part of that match. Mustafa Ali and Tommaso Ciampa. Ciampa's good. One person I'll say no to, and that's somebody who made their return this past week. All clean, all back to brand new, and forgetting about the past. That's Alexa Bliss. Keep her out of that stuff.
Oh, hold on. Not completely clean. I mean, she still brought out the doll.
Yeah, but I feel like, and I did see that, but. I feel like we're dropping that. I feel like when she came out, she didn't come out with the Playhouse gimmick. She came out with her original entrance theme. I just feel like Alexa Bliss is coming back as the Alexa Bliss.
I just hope they get rid of the doll. I want to get rid of the doll. I mean, let's just get rid of that whole gimmick.
And the thing is, they weren't really doing much with. I don't really know what the doll had to do with it there because they were selling Alexa Bliss as the original Alexa Bliss there. So that's kind of catty and an add-on that didn't need to be there. But as we talk about, WWE a lot, we move on to AEW a little bit as we head into their next big pay-per-view. This past week on Dynamite, I don't know if you saw it, but Darby Allin and Jeff Hardy in the Owen Hart Foundation main event match. That match had a little bit of everything and what you definitely want out of those two guys. Entertaining as hell. Darby Allin going through the chair. I think some spots that again, in the world of wrestling, it's hard to see something you've never seen. But Darby Allin kind of doing the swanton and then landing on chairs. And then it was Jeff Hardy doing that, right? And then Darby Allin getting the coffin drop onto the steel steps. Nothing moves that essentially don't have the traditional gives to them. No. You see them going through tables and things that break and kind of like big contraptions, but using like the side of steel steps to land on. That was new and interesting and overall a good main event on Long Island for AEW.
Yeah, I enjoyed it, and I also enjoyed, like I always do, MJF on the mic, especially in his hometown of Long Island, New York. I thought that was fantastic.
Is he a face? He definitely was, because, I would expect from the heel perspective for him to be wearing a jersey for, like, Long Island's opponents or rivals. But he was embracing the being the face in Long Island.
Hey, wasn't it? I was just thinking about it. Wasn't it? I mean, Bret Hart was always cheered in Canada. So, I mean.
Thinking about how he was a heel in America and a face in Canada. But a lot of times in wrestling, the heels stay the heels, meaning that The Miz, while he may be a face and cheered in Cleveland, he still plays a heel while he's in Cleveland.
I like it, though. I like it because it gives it like a hometown flavor. Like, I'm a jackass everywhere else, but these are my people, so I'm like their jackass. Like, that's kind of how I looked at it.
When they go home, always say that like part of the greatness of them is the fact that they're from here and then they left here. Like said The Miz, he always Cleveland, he always says, he loves that he left Cleveland, that kind of, or Edge that he left Toronto or whatever, whoever the heel is. But yeah, it is that Bret Hart kind of feel where like he is a face in one place. But it's weird because MJF is not normally a face in any place. We've even seen him in interviews. He is 100% in character almost all the time, even like when we're talking, family photos and the whole 9 yards. Like, he definitely is, of all the people I've ever seen be a heel, he keeps it up.
I would say, though, it's a nice layer, though. I think it's a different layer to the character because he's not your typical heel. Like, he's in character all the time, but at the same time, there's that layer of, you know what? I am who I am, but the people from where I'm from understand me because I'm from there. I'm their kind of person. And I guess that could rub some Long Islanders the wrong way if they think like, oh, everybody in Long Island's like MJF. But like, people understand. Like, if you're a hometown guy, everybody understands where you're from, I guess.
Yeah. So, closing out this week's edition of the show, a few news and notes. Obviously, Ring of Honor, they got a new logo. Have you seen the new Ring of Honor logo or the one that's being proposed? I think it's very plain. Yeah. I'm not really a fan of it. Tony Khan has announced that they are going to be commissioning trios titles. He's waiting until Kenny Omega comes back, but it looks like some trios titles are coming into AEW. Too many titles for AEW, or can they use a trios title?
No, we don't need trios titles. I can't stand the watered down effect of titles. You have TNT, you got TBS. I mean, you got the main the main titles. You don't need too many titles. It's and like, speaking of that, not to jump too far, but Drew McIntyre was talking about maybe getting the European title back in the picture. As much as I love the European title, I like having limited titles because it gives it more of a prestige for me.
So Bill DeMont on Twitter has said that he thinks Sunny should be removed from the WWE Hall of Fame. We obviously know about all the issues she's going with, facing some serious jail time. No more just personal problems anymore, but now vehicular homicide charges that are coming, or at least manslaughter charges that she is facing, which means actual jail time. Do you think Bill DeMont has any levity? I guess, do you agree with Bill DeMont? That's a short way to put that. Should she be removed from the WWE Hall of Fame?
Yes. And here's the thing too, and I want to take a step back with Bill DeMont. I believe he lost a member of his family. I think his daughter was in a vehicular accident. So like, it's a very touchy thing for the DeMont family. So I think that he's coming from a place of unfortunate experience from a family loss perspective. But here's the thing: from a credibility, having that great prestige of the Hall of Fame. Do you want somebody in the Hall of Fame that's tied to all these criminal cases? No. If somebody, you're not gonna have Sunny in the Hall of Fame after she just killed somebody. I get that you have your incidents that she's had before, and that happens to a lot of wrestlers. But when it comes to death and murder and essentially manslaughter, I guess is the official charge. I haven't read the whole case file, but killing somebody is, whether it's on purpose or not, I think that's bad. I think that's bad press for WWE, and I think the Hall of Fame, maybe what WWE will do is they'll quietly remove her stuff from the Hall of Fame.
Now, she brought forth and had like a Twitter little war with Bill DeMont and talked about all the issues of like him obviously not being a Hall of Famer and why he should never be a Hall of Famer, terrorizing women and harassing women backstage and other things of unprofessional conduct. So apparently neither of them are really close friends, and they both have things to say about each other. But I guess, like you said, she thinks Bill DeMont will never be a Hall of Famer for all of his issues that he's been involved in. So maybe he shouldn't be speaking. But yeah, I kind of agree in the more like, she's not like Hulk Hogan. She's not the face of the Hall of Fame. So you don't maybe necessarily need to remove her as much as you just kind of don't need to include her in things in the future, which kind of phase her out a little bit. And finally, WWE's been doing this one thing that I've actually been a bigger fan of. I don't know if you caught on, but they started doing it, I think, at WrestleMania Backlash, and they're really amplifying the locations of where they're going in their events. We saw it this past week with the WrestleMania Backlash commercial, and keep as the commercial comes to an end, live on Peacock from Providence, Rhode Island, or Hell in a Cell coming to you live from Chicago, Illinois. So the next premium live event, WWE live from Chicago, Illinois. And one example I saw this week is normally they have commercials for SmackDown and they're pretty generic, and they say, but the commercial for SmackDown featured both graphically and verbally live from Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, SmackDown this Friday, the Usos and the women's tag team belts. But they're really amplifying the locations, and again, that's something. It's a little touch. It's not really a big thing, but I like it a lot because it just adds to especially if you're going to an event, it makes it a little more exciting, a little sexier. The fact that, the event you're going to, because normally they say, Friday Night SmackDown live this Friday on Fox. But the fact that they say Friday Night SmackDown live from Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania this Friday on Fox, it kind of gives it more of that hyped feel. But I noticed it with WrestleMania Backlash, how they kept playing the commercials during the kickoff show, and they kept, as the commercials were ending, they kept saying, live from Providence tonight, live from Providence in 30 minutes, not just talking, on the kickoff panel, I'm saying in the physical commercials. Obviously WrestleMania and commercials like that always included that, but it was a nice little touch, like, like the Hell in a Cell commercial, included like live from Chicago, Illinois, Hell in a Cell, June 5th. And I think that's just a cool little touch. Like to see WWE do more of those little things that cost no money. But hey, it's a start, and hopefully they keep it up. Because like I said, if you're going to a Raw or SmackDown, it kind of amplifies it up a little bit, a little more on the exciting end. And even the house shows. I mean, I feel like with the house shows, they've been amping up a little more with the commercials that they air about where the locations are hitting, and kind of that kind of thing. They make it feel more big time even when you're going to one of those. But for this week's edition of the show, for Brandon, I'm Jarad. This has been another edition of the show. Thanks for subscribing and following us on Twitter, and we will talk to you